It was just after midnight on New Year's Day in Cohasset, Massachusetts. The celebrations had ended, fireworks had faded into memory. The kind of coastal winter quiet had settled in, the kind where the streets are empty, the air is sharp, and the town feels suspended in time. Most families were asleep, recovering from the night before, preparing to return to normal life in the morning. Inside one home, a family of 5 had just rung in the new year together. Dinner had been cooked, champagne had been poured, the children were in the house. From the outside, nothing appeared unusual. Nothing suggested that this would become the last night a woman would ever be seen alive. By early morning, while the sky was still dark, she was gone. There were no screams reported, no neighbors called 911, no signs of forced entry, no frantic messages sent to friends or family. In fact, hours passed, then days, before anyone realized something was wrong. At first, her absence didn't trigger alarms. She was a high-level professional. Travel was routine. Last-minute work emergencies were common. Silence for her wasn't unheard of. But as time moved forward, that silence began to feel heavier. 3 days would pass before police were notified. By then, the new year had fully begun. School schedules resumed, offices reopened, and life continued on as if nothing happened. Yet, somewhere in that stretch of time, the truth was already slipping away. This was not a woman without roots. She was a mother of 3, a respected executive, a daughter, a sister, a friend, someone who made plans, someone who showed up, someone who didn't simply vanish without an explanation. And yet, that is exactly what it looked like. As investigators would soon learn, the story of her disappearance was not about a random act or a sudden break from reality. It was about a carefully constructed life, about secrets hidden in plain sight, about control, desperation, and what can happen when the illusion of stability begins to crack. This is the story of Ana Walshe, a woman who disappeared in the early hours of a new year while the world was still celebrating, and whose absence would ultimately expose one of the most chilling cases Massachusetts has seen in decades. Hey everyone, welcome back. If you are new here, hello, my name is Alicia, and this is a space where we focus on victim-centered storytelling, delayed justice, and cases that deserve careful, ethical coverage. Happy New Year, everybody. Before we get into today's case, I wanted to say that this one was especially heavy to research. It's complex, emotionally charged, and deeply unsettling, not just because of shock value, but because of what it reveals about control, power, and how quickly life can just be taken behind closed doors. If you find value in what I do in this content, please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on post notifications so you don't miss future uploads. And if you're listening on Spotify or another podcast platform, leaving a 5-star rating really helps the show grow and allows these stories to reach more people. You can also find me on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. Those are linked in the description, where I share shorter, more digestible breakdowns of cases and ongoing updates. As always, I want to remind you that I am not here to sensationalize tragedy. Everything you'll hear today is based on court records, verified reporting, and public testimony. When I share personal thoughts, I will make sure to make that distinction clear. This case centers around Ana Walshe, a mother of 3 whose disappearance shattered a family and exposed a story far darker than anyone could have ever imagined. It's one that raises difficult questions about what we see, what we miss, and what happens when warning signs go ignored. So take a deep breath, settle in, and let's dive into today's case. Ana Walshe was born in Belgrade, Serbia, a city shaped by history, resilience, and reinvention. She would eventually carry that same sense of determination with her across continents. Ana held dual citizenship in Serbia and the United States, a detail that quietly reflects the life she was building, rooted in one place but reaching toward another. In 2005, Ana immigrated to the United States, stepping into a new country with ambition and an unmistakable work ethic. Like many newcomers, she started wherever opportunity presented itself, taking seasonal roles in the hospitality industry, an industry known for long hours, high expectations, and very little margin for error. That same year, she accepted a position as a housekeeping attendant at a prestigious luxury inn in rural Virginia. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was disciplined, demanding, and exacting, qualities Ana appeared to embrace rather than resist. By 2006, she had already moved up, transitioning into a server role at the same property. The progression was subtle but telling. Ana wasn't just passing through these jobs, she was learning them from the ground up. After spending some time in New York City, Ana made another pivotal move in 2008, relocating to Massachusetts. There, she secured a full-time position as a reservations manager at a renowned boutique hotel in Lenox. She remained in that role for more than 2 years, marking the first long-term managerial chapter of her career. It was also during this period, according to those who knew her, that Ana met Brian Walshe, the man who would eventually become her husband. Friends later described their relationship as intense and immediate. One close friend would say Ana spoke of Brian as her best friend, emphasizing how close they were, how quickly everything seemed to just fall into place. She framed it as love at first sight. In 2010, Ana's career took another leap forward when she accepted a position as assistant front office manager at a major luxury hotel in Washington, D.C. Over the next several years, she steadily climbed the ranks, becoming front desk manager in 2012 and then front office operations manager in 2013. These weren't ceremonial titles. They came with responsibility, staff oversight, guest experience, crisis management, and the relentless pressure that comes with high-end hospitality. By 2015, Ana was recruited back to Boston, this time as a front office director at a prominent international hotel. Her professional trajectory was unmistakable. She was trusted, capable, and increasingly influential within her field. In 2016, Ana and Brian married. A year later, the couple welcomed their first child, beginning what would eventually become a family of 5. Even as motherhood entered the picture, demanding, exhausting, and all-consuming, Ana did not step away from her career. Instead, she balanced both worlds. In 2017, she accepted a leadership role as front office director at a landmark hotel on Newbury Street, and over time, she advanced further, taking on positions as rooms manager and later rooms director, overseeing complex operations while raising 3 young boys at home. By 2020, Ana transitioned into a broader operational role, becoming an operations director for a Boston-based hospitality group. Then, in February of 2022, she began working for a major global real estate company, her most recent professional chapter. Throughout all of this, Ana curated an online presence that reflected who she appeared to be at her core. Her social media posts often centered on goal setting, perseverance, helping others succeed, professional growth, and family. They painted a picture of someone driven, optimistic, and deeply invested in building a meaningful life, both at work and at home. From the outside, Ana Walshe's story looked like one of momentum, an immigrant who arrived with little more than opportunity, a woman who worked her way up, step by step, a wife, a mother, a professional, always moving forward. And yet, as with so many of these stories, it's what happens after this chapter that forces us to look back and question everything we thought we understood. To those who encountered Brian Walshe in Boston's elite dining and social circles, he appeared to be exactly what the city admires: cultured, connected, and seemingly untouchable. Brian made himself known through spectacle. He was a regular presence at some of the city's most celebrated restaurants, often hosting elaborate dinner parties that bordered on theatrical. These weren't quiet meals, they were statements. Tabs ran into the thousands. Wine selections were extravagant. Entire tasting menus were ordered whether they were offered or not. On more than one occasion, he would purchase items so excessive they became stories of their own, like ordering an entire restaurant supply of rare truffles in a single night. Among restaurateurs, Brian aspired to be what insiders called a whale, a big-ticket patron whose presence alone conferred status. And for a time, he succeeded. Former friends recall nights when Brian spent freely, effortlessly, projecting the image of someone who belonged anywhere money could buy. But behind the velvet robe, cracks were already showing. One former friend recalls meeting Brian on a night when he ran up a $6,000 dinner tab only to have his credit cards decline when the check arrived. Brian smoothed the situation by leaving behind a luxury watch as collateral, returning the next day with cash and an additional $2,000 for the trouble. Other stories followed. A dinner in Chicago capped by a $25,000 bottle of wine, near impossible reservations secured around the world, spontaneous trips to globally renowned restaurants that most people wait years to experience. Brian didn't just spend like someone wealthy, he performed wealth. He cultivated an image of worldliness and authority. If someone mentioned a future vacation, Brian always had advice, which hotel to book, where to eat, and what not to miss. He spoke fluently about wine, art, and travel, and seemed to exist in perpetual motion, always somewhere exclusive, always one step ahead. Yet, for someone so eager to be seen, Brian revealed very little about himself. He often told people he was wealthy and Persian. He claimed ownership of a sprawling Beacon Hill brownstone and would meet his friends on the stoop before nights out, later seeing them off from the same spot, never inviting anyone inside. Despite the home's grand scale, no one recalls him hosting dinners there. In fact, close friends say Brian almost never allowed anyone inside of his home. The source of his wealth was equally elusive. Depending on the day and the audience, Brian claimed to deal in art, to have sold a tech company to Expedia for nearly $200 million, or to have made his fortune through oil investments overseas. The story shifted, but the conclusion was always the same. Brian wanted people to believe he had arrived. Privately, however, friends noticed a different pattern. Checks bounced, credit cards declined, loans were quietly requested and rarely repaid. When questioned, Brian blamed accountants, money managers, or administrative delays. One former friend would later say he was always buying time. Those closest to him believed this hunger for validation ran deeper. Brian spoke openly about a troubled childhood, telling friends that his parents, particularly his father, a prominent neurosurgeon, were physically and emotionally abusive. According to Brian, he grew up being told he was worthless, a failure, and someone with no future. Ana herself would later echo this narrative in a letter written in his defense, describing a man shaped by shame, secrecy, and survival through deception. Court records and sworn affidavits reveal that Brian had spent time in a psychiatric facility during his youth where he was reportedly labeled a sociopath, a non-clinical term often used to describe individuals with antisocial traits such as deceitfulness, lack of empathy, and disregard for others. To those who knew him well, Brian's spending wasn't about money at all. It was about acceptance, about control, about buying belonging in rooms where he feared he didn't truly belong. As one former friend put it, it was all pay to play. There was, however, one truth hidden among Brian's many claims. He did deal in art, just not legitimately. In November of 2016, Brian sat inside a luxury hotel lounge with 2 paintings tucked inside designer bags, waiting to complete a private sale. He had advertised the works online as authentic Andy Warhols, backed, he claimed, by documentation and authentication stamps. A Los Angeles gallery owner, convinced by the presentation, agreed to purchase the pieces for $80,000. The deal closed swiftly. The money was deposited, and by the time the buyer realized that the paintings were crude forgeries, freshly cut canvases with missing authentication, Brian had vanished. Calls went unanswered, messages ignored, excuses followed, and some partial payments trickled in, but then silence. Federal investigators would later determine this was not an isolated incident. For more than 5 years, Brian had been running a sophisticated bait-and-switch scheme. He acquired authentic works under false pretenses, hired skilled forgers to produce replicas, and sold the fakes while retaining the originals. The operation spanned continents and victims, unraveling only after repeated complaints drew federal attention. In May of 2018, the FBI raided the home Brian shared with Ana. He was charged with wire fraud and placed on pretrial supervision fitted with an electric ankle monitor. The carefully constructed persona he'd spent years maintaining had begun to collapse. Privately, Brian confessed to at least one person, saying that everything about him was fabricated. "I'm not an art dealer," he admitted. "I'm an art swindler." Yet, even as legal consequences loomed, Brian searched for a way out. When his estranged father died later that year, Brian denied knowledge of a will that explicitly disinherited him. He petitioned the court to control the estate, drained bank accounts, and liquidated assets, selling off family heirlooms, artwork, and jewelry, even advertising a bonus car in an estate sale listing. What Brian didn't know was that his father's close friend had already photographed the will and turned it over to authorities. The deception was uncovered. The estate claims were challenged, and yet again, Brian's narrative began to unravel. By 2021, Brian had pleaded guilty to federal charges related to the art fraud and was placed on house arrest while awaiting sentencing. His future uncertain, his finances strained, and his freedom hanging on by a thread. Despite the legal troubles from the outside, the Walshe family appeared to be settling into the life they had worked so hard to build. But beneath the surface, quiet fractures were forming. Fractures that, in hindsight, feel impossible to ignore. By late 2022, Ana had begun voicing frustrations, not about her marriage itself, but about her living situation. Brian's ongoing legal problems meant she was unable to freely travel, and Ana's career had once again pulled her toward Washington, D.C. Wanting stability and a sense of forward motion, Ana accepted a new role at Tishman Speyer and made a decisive move. She sold the family's Jerusalem Road home in just 5 days for $35,000 over the asking price and purchased a new house in the affluent Chevy Chase neighborhood of Washington, D.C. The plan was temporary. Ana would live and work in Washington during the week, while Brian and the boys remained in Massachusetts, renting a home in Cohasset until Brian resolved his legal issues and could relocate to join her. Ana spent weekends with her family in Massachusetts, then returned to D.C. for the work week, holding everything together in transit. But the distance wore on her. Friends would later say Ana seemed stretched thin, commuting, parenting, managing a demanding career, and navigating uncertainty at home. Still, very few people knew of any serious marital discord. To most, Ana and Brian appeared functional, even united. Yet there were warning signs, some dating back years. While Ana and Brian were still dating and Ana was living in Washington, she contacted police to report that her boyfriend from Boston had threatened to kill her and her friends. She never named Brian directly and never pursued formal charges. In 2014, Ana confided in a close friend of Brian's through text message, stating plainly that Brian is violent with me. These incidents remained largely hidden from public view at the time. Then, just 1 week before New Year's Eve, Ana sent a cryptic and urgent message to her mother, asking her to come to Boston from Serbia immediately. No explanation followed. And then, just days later, unbeknownst to Ana at this time, Brian was researching best states to divorce for a man. That search would later surface in court. In the weeks leading up to her disappearance, Ana was constantly in motion. On November 23, 2022, she traveled from Massachusetts to Dublin, then onward to Serbia, missing Thanksgiving to visit her mother, who had been experiencing health complications. She returned to the United States weeks later and quickly resumed work obligations. On Christmas Eve, Ana traveled to Washington, D.C. for last-minute professional responsibilities. She stayed overnight, but was unable to secure a flight home on Christmas Day. Instead, she made the long drive back to Massachusetts, returning Christmas Day at around 8 p.m., missing Christmas Eve and most of Christmas with her family. On December 29th, Ana returned to Washington. A friend later told investigators that Ana seemed unusually exhausted and emotional during the visit, drained but still pressing forward. The following day, December 30th, Ana traveled back to Massachusetts, planning to stay with her family through January 3rd. On December 31st, Ana's final full day, the morning began like any other. She attended a bar class at 8 a.m. where instructors and classmates described her as upbeat, engaged, and in good spirits. After class, she had her nails done. She made conversation. She talked about the future. Witnesses later reported seeing no injuries and no signs of distress. Business records and electronic data would later corroborate her movements throughout the day. That evening, New Year's Eve, a mutual friend, Jim Mutlu, arrived at the Walsh home at around 8:30 p.m. According to Jim, the atmosphere was celebratory. Brian cooked dinner, the children were present, nothing appeared out of the ordinary. At one point, Brian mentioned that he had lost his phone, but that he appreciated it and he felt more in the moment. Jim stayed until approximately 1:30 a.m. on January 1st and then left. No one outside that home would see Ana Walshe again. Days passed. On the morning of January 4th, 2023, Teresa Marchese, the director of human resources at Tishman Speyer, returned to work in Washington, D.C. Almost immediately, she was alerted to a concerning situation. The husband of one of her employees was trying to locate his wife. That employee was 39-year-old Ana Walshe, and the husband was 50-year-old Brian Walsh. Teresa notified her supervisor, and together they stepped into a conference room and called Brian. He sounded calm, controlled, and Brian told them that Ana had left their Massachusetts home early on January 1st due to a work emergency. According to him, she had flown to Washington, D.C., and he hadn't heard from her since, something he described as extremely unusual. In fact, he claimed it was the longest they had ever gone without talking. This conversation with Brian immediately raised concern for Ana's employers because they were not aware of any work emergency. No one ever reached out to Ana telling her to travel to DC, and they were expecting her to return to work back on January 3rd. Teresa decided to drive to Ana's DC townhouse with another employee, and while en route, she spoke with Brian again. He remained calm and provided her with the garage code so she could access the property. When Teresa arrived, nothing appeared disturbed. No broken windows, no forced entry. Inside the garage were cardboard boxes and car seats, but no car and no Ana. The door leading into the home from the garage was locked, and Teresa called Brian again and told him she intended to escalate the situation to the company's global head of security, Hugh Dunleavy, a retired Secret Service agent. When Hugh was added to a three-way call, Brian's demeanor shifted. He became upset. Hugh asked very direct questions. Brian repeated his story, and Hugh then asked one critical question. Had Brian contacted the police? And he said he had not. He told him plainly that's what he needed to do. Instead, Hugh coordinated with Washington, D.C. police himself. Officers entered Ana's townhouse, and it was clear Ana was not there. Just before noon on January 4th, 2023, Hugh Dunleavy contacted the Cohasset Police Department and officially reported Ana Walshe missing, 3 days after she was last seen alive. Once Ana Walshe was officially reported missing, the situation shifted, slowly at first, but unmistakably from concern to scrutiny. On January 4th, just hours after the missing persons report was filed, a Cohasset police officer was dispatched to the Walsh residence to speak with Brian Walsh. What followed would become the foundation of the narrative Brian presented to investigators, one he would repeat, refine, and rely upon in the days ahead. Brian told police that Ana had returned home from Washington, D.C. on Friday, December 30th, and spent the weekend with the family. According to him, on Saturday, December 31st, it had unfolded normally. Ana attended a bar workout that morning, got her nails done, and later she took the children out of the house so that Brian could prepare dinner. That evening, Brian said Ana's former boss and family friend, Jim Mutlu, arrived to celebrate New Year's Eve with the the family. Brian described the night as relaxed and celebratory. Dinner was shared, champagne was open. At some point, the group signed a champagne box, something Brian mentioned as a small detail, but something he was keen to include. Brian told officers that throughout the evening, Ana was texting work contacts and mentioned to Jim that she might need to leave early for a work emergency. She didn't specify what the issue was, and Brian said that this didn't alarm him. According to him, similar work emergencies had happened before, most recently on December 24th when Ana had worked until 7 p.m. and was unable to secure a flight home Christmas Day. Brian said Jim left the house between 1 and 1:30 a.m. on January 1st, and shortly after, Ana told him that she needed to leave early for work. Brian said he went to bed, and he claimed Ana had kissed him goodbye that morning at 6 a.m. One of their children, 6 years old at the time, told Brian that he saw Ana get into what he believed was a taxi. Brian said Ana typically used Uber or Lyft when traveling to the airport, and that rideshare drivers usually picked her up right at the end of the driveway, but the type of vehicle that Ana got in that morning could not be confirmed. Brian told police that Ana had only slept about 3 hours that night. He added that she had been sick early in the week but was improving, and that despite the limited sleep, her routine that morning appeared normal. He described what Ana was wearing when she left: a small black coat, blue and gray hunter boots, and that she was carrying a duffel bag and a black Prada purse. Brian noted that Ana usually traveled with a Louis Vuitton carry-on but hadn't taken it this time. He emphasized that Ana sometimes traveled light and at least on one occasion had only taken her purse with her. Brian said that Ana had originally been scheduled to fly out on Tuesday, January 3rd at 8 a.m., but that last-minute schedule changes were common in her line of work. He told officers it was not unusual for Ana to go long periods without communication while working in Washington, D.C. He also made a point to explain his own response, or lack thereof. Brian acknowledged that Ana had gone radio silent before, and whenever he reacted strongly, Ana had become upset with them. He referenced the prior incident on December 24th when Ana had been working late and was unable to secure a flight home. When Brian was unable to get a hold of Ana when she hadn't contacted him, she revealed that she had missed her flight and was trying to get all of that sorted and get a rental car so that she could drive back, and that's why she hadn't been responding to Brian. According to him, because of that experience, he tried not to panic this time. Brian told police he had lost his phone on Saturday, December 31st, and he said it wasn't found until Monday afternoon, January the 2nd at 2:30 p.m. when one of the children located it. During the time his phone was missing, Brian said that he had been emailing Ana. Once the phone was recovered, he said he attempted to contact her directly, then reached out to her workplace where he learned that Ana had not reported to work. That's when he said he became concerned. Brian told officers that Ana had never accidentally left her phone behind before. He said that he did not have access to her Uber or Lyft accounts, and he also explained that Ana had no immediate family in the United States beside Brian and her sons. Her sister lived in Toronto. Her mother lived in Belgrade, Serbia. Ana had visited her mother in November due to health concerns. Brian also mentioned a long-standing family dispute involving a cousin, though he did not elaborate. Brian told investigators that Ana only had one phone, managed the household finances, and that they were financially stable, earning over $300,000 annually. He discussed his own legal situation openly, including his federal art fraud case, his arrest in 2018, his sentencing in 2021, and the fact that he was currently on home confinement. He also told police that Ana's passport was not in the house. As investigators began piecing together these details, speculation swirled among the couple's social circle. Many of their friends, particularly those from Boston's high-end restaurant scene, initially dismissed the idea of any foul play. Some theorized Ana had simply escaped to a tropical destination to decompress, waiting for Brian and the boys to eventually join her once his legal issues were resolved. No one imagined anything darker. Ana's friends and family, however, felt something was deeply wrong. They knew this behavior was profoundly out of character. Ana was a planner, a communicator, a mother who stayed connected. Even early police messaging reflected uncertainty. At one point, authorities publicly suggested that Ana might have simply been an exhausted, overworked mom and needed space, and that the goal was just to simply confirm that she was alive and safe. But as the hours stretched into days, one thing became increasingly clear. Ana Walshe had vanished without a trace, and the story Brian told, calm, detailed, and carefully framed, was about to be tested. After their initial conversation with Brian Walshe, investigators began doing what they do best, quietly testing the story they'd been given against the physical world. On January 4th, officers conducted their first walkthrough of the Walshe home. At first glance, nothing appeared overly chaotic, but small details stood out. In the upstairs bedroom shared by Ana and Brian, police noticed a hole in the ceiling exposing the attic above. A piece of drywall sat nearby in the nightstand. When asked, Brian explained that the damage was caused by him walking around in the attic, though he did not explain why he had been in the attic in the first place. Outside, a Volvo XC90 was parked in the driveway. Investigators observed plastic sheeting lining the cargo area and a piece of maple seedling lying on top of the plastic. An unusual detail that caught their attention, though its significance wasn't yet clear. At that stage, no items were seized. Nothing about the home rose to the level of probable cause. Still, officers took note. In the basement, investigators observed several trash bags, though they did not go through them. Detective Schmidt nudged one of the bags with his boot, and he believed it may have contained a piece of rug. A search of the swimming pool yielded no results, and a canine searched the wooded area behind the home, but came back with nothing. But investigators were not done. The following day, January 5th, police returned to speak with Brian again, this time focused on reconstructing January 1st, hour by hour. Brian repeated that Ana kissed him goodbye around 6 a.m. He said he went back to sleep and woke up around 7 a.m. Their 6-year-old son was already awake, sitting on the couch playing on his iPad. Brian told his son that his mother had left early this morning for work, and he responded that he knew because he saw her leave that morning. Brian said he made French toast for the children that morning, and later at around 2 p.m., their babysitter arrived. Brian told investigators that after the babysitter took over, he left the house to run errands, stopping to see his mother, visiting CVS, and then returning home. During this interview, Brian was empathetic on several points. He stated that Ana was not suicidal and that their marriage was fine, that there was no affair. When officers asked Brian to hand over his phone, he hesitated. He said he wanted to cooperate, but he needed to consult with his attorney first. 2 days later, on January 7th, police interviewed Brian again. His timeline remained largely unchanged. He said he woke up at 7, made breakfast, sent some work emails, cleaned the house, waited for the babysitter. He claimed he left his house around 3 p.m., drove to Swampscott, stopped at CVS and Whole Foods, visited his mother at her apartment complex, and then returned home. He told detectives the drive typically took about an hour, but that day, traffic extended it to roughly 90 minutes, putting him home at around 5:30 p.m. He described his conversation with his mother as pretty broad. Brian told investigators that on January 2nd, he continued emailing Ana but received no response. By January 3rd, he had contacted her workplace, learned that she was not at work. That, he said, is when he knew something was wrong, prompting the eventual missing person report filed by Ana's employer. He again emphasized that Ana's job required frequent last-minute travel due to property management emergencies, which police were able to verify she had done in the past. He said that their marriage was stable and that Ana wanted the family to eventually relocate to Washington, D.C. An affair, he said, didn't make sense, though he acknowledged it was technically possible. Brian also offered alternative explanations as to what could have happened to Ana. He told investigators about a long-standing family land dispute in Serbia dating back generations involving money and unresolved tension, an issue Ana had reportedly dealt with during her November 2022 trip overseas. He also mentioned Ron Rivlin, a figure from his own federal art fraud case, suggesting Rivlin may have attempted to involve Ana in litigation and had once sent her a threatening Facebook message over 6 years prior. Brian said he could not think of anyone who would want to hurt Ana. He voluntarily handed over the children's iPads, including one iPad mini along with his iPhone 13 mini. Police made copies of the data and returned the device. Then, early in the morning of January 7th, something unexpected happened. Detective Schmidt received an email from an unfamiliar Gmail address. The message claimed Ana Walshe was being held hostage over a $127,000 deal gone wrong. A second email followed, including a photograph purportedly showing Ana. Investigators quickly determined the photo was fake. A reverse image search traced it to iStock Photo, where it appeared under generic kidnapped stock images. A search warrant served to Google revealed the email account originated from Nigeria with no US-based IP address. Detectives later testified the department had been inundated with tips following a press conference, and the emails appeared to be opportunistic hoaxes. Then came the digital evidence. When extracting location data from Brian's iPhone 13, they discovered discrepancies. On January 1st, Brian's phone showed him traveling to Lowe's at approximately 6:05 p.m., even though he had stated that his phone had been lost at this time. Surveillance footage captured him wearing a black mask and purple gloves, purchasing over $400 worth of cleaning supplies. Later that evening at 6:28 p.m., he was seen on camera at CVS buying 5 bottles of hydrogen peroxide. At 6:56 p.m., surveillance placed him inside a Stop and Shop in Swampscott. On January 2nd and January 4th, Brian was recorded at Home Goods spending roughly $250. On January 2nd alone, he purchased more than $450 in cleaning products, including 12 pounds of baking soda from a Home Depot. On January 8th, investigators met for a briefing and executed a full search warrant at the Walshe residence. They seized 3 MacBooks, 2 iPhones, and 3 iPads. Forensic copies were made, and that's when the case changed dramatically. One MacBook extraction belonging to Brian Walshe revealed an extensive series of internet searches beginning in the early morning hours of January 1st and continuing for days. I did also want to note here that all of the devices that were seized from the home were all logged into the same Apple ID, which belonged to Brian Walshe. Therefore, all of the data that was extracted from the MacBook, as far as search history goes, were also consistent on the iPads and the iPhones that were all seized from the home. So all of the search data matches up on all of the devices, but the discovery was initially made on the MacBook belonging to Brian Walshe. At 4:52 a.m., Brian searched best ways to dispose of a body, 10 ways to dispose of a body, how long for someone to be missing to inherit, how long does DNA last, can identification be made on partial human remains, what does bleach do to dead bodies, how to use hydrogen peroxide on bloodstains. These searches continued until 1:56 p.m. On January 2nd, beginning at 2 a.m., he searched how to remove a SIM card from an iPhone, how to dismember a body, can you be charged with murder without a body, disposing of a body in the trash, and these continued on until 7:09 p.m. On January 3rd, searches included can baking soda make a dead body smell good, how long for dismembered body to decompose, body found at trash station, can police get your search history without your computer, which is when search activity from the devices ceased. Investigators also reviewed searches made before Ana disappeared, and on December 27th, Brian had searched best state to divorce for a man. On January 1st, he had also searched for Patrick Kearney, who is a serial killer known as the Trash Bag Killer, who disposed of victims in garbage bags. During the home search, police located hydrogen peroxide and a knife in a cabinet above the refrigerator. The knife blade tested positive for blood. Bottles and sinks tested negative. In the basement, investigators found red-brown stains on the floor, the bottom of the stair, a support beam, and near the area where the black trash bags had been stored. Those areas all tested positive for Ana Walshe's blood. All sinks, drains, and showers tested negative. Later that day, on January 8th, investigators interviewed Brian again, this time at his attorney's office with counsel present. The interview began at 11:18 a.m., and Brian had recited his January 1st timeline. Police told him they had begun extracting data from multiple devices, including one belonging to a child. Investigators confronted him with the early morning searches made around 4:45 a.m. on January 1st. Brian said he had no idea how those searches occurred and suggested his 6-year-old son may have been using his iPad in his room to make those searches. Police challenged that explanation, citing the volume, specificity, and content of the searches. When asked again how they could have occurred, Brian said he did not know. And with that, the narrative Brian had carefully built began to collapse under the weight of evidence. By the afternoon of January 8th, investigators believed they had reached a breaking point. At approximately 4 p.m., officers went to Brian Walshe's attorney's office and placed him under arrest. He was charged with misleading investigators, a charge rooted not in speculation, but evidence. Brian's repeated claims about running errands to places like CVS and Whole Foods no longer aligned with his cell phone data or surveillance footage, which painted a far more deliberate and concerning picture of his movements. Brian was transported back to the Cohasset Police Department for processing. During the arrest, officers observed cuts on Brian's hands, an observation that was documented and would later be noted in court proceedings. Despite the arrest, the investigation did not pause. Following Brian's arrest, investigators turned their attention to the apartment complex where Brian's mother lived, a location Brian had repeatedly mentioned during interviews. Police secured dumpsters from the property and transported them to a trash transfer station where teams began the painstaking process of sorting through the contents bag by bag. What they found was chilling. Among the recovered items were plastic sheeting, multiple pieces, and a bag containing personal effects believed to belong to Ana. Inside were a pair of hunter boots, a COVID-19 vaccination card bearing Ana Walshe's name, and additional belongings investigators identified as hers. Police then pulled security footage from the apartment complex, and footage from January 3rd, 2023 at 4:33 p.m. showed an individual matching Brian Walshe's description disposing of items into the dumpster. According to the property manager, the trash was scheduled to be collected on January 4th, meaning those items would have been gone in hours. Investigators also reviewed Ana's financial records, and there was no bank activity after January 1st. Her accounts, valued at more than $200,000, remained untouched. As the case escalated, the community responded. 3 days after Brian's initial arrest, residents of Cohasset gathered into the town common, wrapped in scarves and winter coats, candles flickering in their hands. They prayed for Ana's safe return, grappling with the growing possibility that she may not be coming home. Even then, disbelief lingered. A former close friend of Brian's, speaking anonymously, expressed what many felt. Murder is so far out of his character, the friend said. At worst, he could throw a tantrum, but he wasn't violent. Others echoed the same sentiment. They recalled no visible signs of marital trouble, no arguments, no tension, not even on the night Ana disappeared. The question hung in the air. Could he really have fooled everyone? 1 week later, that question was overtaken by something far more concrete. Brian Walshe was formally charged with murder and improper conveyance of a human body. By January 9th, the investigation had shifted fully into forensic mode. That morning, Ana Walshe's Volvo, the vehicle Brian claimed she used routinely, was processed at the Cohasset Police Department by forensic scientist David Gold. What investigators encountered was not a chaotic crime scene, but something far more unsettling. The exterior of the vehicle was immaculately clean. Gold noted only a single apparent hair on the front passenger side door handle, a detail that stood out precisely because there was so little else to document. Inside, the vehicle was also remarkably clean, with only miscellaneous everyday items scattered throughout. 2 child safety seats were installed, one in the second row passenger seat and another in the third row driver's side position. But then, small irregularities emerged. Gold observed 2 stains on the sun visors, a red-brown stain on the driver's side visor and brown staining on the passenger side visor. Neither stain was immediately visible without close inspection. Even more concerning were items recovered throughout the cabin. Examination-style gloves were found in multiple locations, 2 gloves in the front passenger side door, 2 gloves sealed inside a Ziploc bag in the passenger door pocket, and 16 gloves stored inside the center console. Also recovered from the center console were 2 Band-Aids. Gold conducted approximately 40 to 50 presumptive blood tests throughout the vehicle, and 5 locations tested positive for Ana Walshe's blood. The driver's seat control panel, the second row passenger side floor mat, the back side of the folded third row passenger seat, and the trunk mats. Notably, none of these areas showed visible staining before testing, indicating that a cleanup had possibly been done on the vehicle. Once the Volvo was fully processed, Gold was redirected to a second location. That evening at approximately 8:15 p.m., he arrived at 300 Forest Street in Peabody, Massachusetts, a trash and recycling facility where investigators had been working throughout the day. By the time Gold arrived, the primary search was already underway. Trash bags believed to be connected to the case had been isolated and numbered for forensic examination. What was recovered from those trash bags would dramatically alter the trajectory of the case. Across multiple bags, investigators documented numerous personal items, many bearing red-brown staining. Bag 1 contained a pair of green boots, a black jacket with staining with a bracelet inside of the pocket, a black purse and black wallet, a pair of headphones, socks, and a set of Volkswagen keys. Bag 2 included 2 white towels with staining and tape containing gauze, also stained. Bag 3 contained a white robe with staining. Bag 4 contained 2 pairs of slippers, both stained, apparent hairs and fibers, trace material, a wristwatch, a sponge with a wipe. Bags 5 and 6 revealed multiple cut pieces of a rug, all with visible staining, a Tyvek suit wrapper, and safety goggles, additional rug fragments with apparent tissue-like material. Bag 7 included bottles of hydrogen peroxide, an ice pack, and a blue flap sheet. Bag 8 was particularly alarming. Inside were a hammer, wire snips, a hatchet, a hacksaw, all bearing red-brown staining. Bag 9 included a large tarp taped together, protective booties, insulation material, and container fragments. Subsequent presumptive testing revealed that the hacksaw, hammer, hatchet, and shears all tested positive for Ana's blood. By the end of the day, investigators knew they were no longer searching for a missing person. By the time the case against Brian Walshe reached the courtroom, nearly 2 years had passed, but Ana's body was never recovered. Ana Walshe disappeared in January of 2023. It wasn't until December 2025 that jurors finally sat down to hear what the Commonwealth and the defense believed happened inside the Walshe home and after. The prosecution's case was built methodically. There was no single moment of spectacle, no eyewitness to the crime, no recovered body. Instead, the Commonwealth relied on forensic evidence, digital footprints, surveillance footage, and Brian's own shifting statements to tell a story of intent, preparation, and concealment. Prosecutors argued that Ana was killed inside the home in the early hours of New Year's Day 2023. They walked jurors through the cleaning supply purchases, the internet searches beginning before dawn, the blood evidence found in the basement and vehicle, and the disposal of Ana's belongings across multiple trash locations. They emphasized Brian's lies to police, his his attempt to redirect suspicion and the sheer scale of cleanup effort. The defense, meanwhile, attempted to introduce doubt where certainty was absent. They argued that Ana's cause of death could not be proven beyond a reasonable doubt without a body. At one point, the defense floated a theory that Ana may have died from unexpected natural causes after Brian had gone to sleep, despite evidence that she was healthy, active, and making future plans. Jurors were not persuaded. And then came the moment that nobody expected. A key defense witness took the stand and fundamentally reframed how jurors understood Ana's final months. His name was William Fastow. William was a seasoned real estate broker with roughly 20 years of experience, primarily in Washington, D.C. He testified that he met Ana in early 2022 after being referred by a mutual friend, Jim Mutlu, while Ana was searching for a home in Washington, D.C. Fastow assisted her in purchasing a 4-story townhouse on 43rd Street Northwest. After the sale, he said they remained in close contact, and that relationship deepened. William testified that shortly after Ana relocated to Washington, D.C., their relationship became romantic and intimate. He told the jury that he was separated from his wife at the time and that Ana confided in him extensively about her life, her marriage, her stress, and her growing despair. According to William, Ana's 3 children remained in Massachusetts because Brian's home confinement required him to be their primary caregiver. Initially, Ana accepted this arrangement. Over time, William said she became deeply distressed, expressing guilt that she could not be the mother she wanted to be. She told him Brian's unresolved federal case was holding her life hostage. William testified that they saw each other 2 to 3 times a week when Ana was in D.C., and they communicated daily through texts, phone calls, and Instagram messages. Ana spoke to him about financial arguments with Brian, particularly credit card charges and sports memorabilia purchases. She also described mounting tension around the holidays. William told jurors that Ana and Brian argued after her delayed return to Massachusetts on Christmas of 2022. Ana confided that she was frustrated and emotionally exhausted. Perhaps most striking, William testified that Ana was deeply concerned about integrity. If Brian ever discovered her relationship with William, she wanted the truth to come directly from her, not someone else. William also revealed that he and Ana had traveled together to Dublin, Ireland from November 23rd through the 27th of 2022. Afterward, Ana continued on to Serbia to visit her mother while William returned to Washington, D.C. On Christmas Eve, William testified he and Ana had dinner at the Annapolis Yacht Club. Ana stayed overnight at his home, and the following day, due to snow, her flight was delayed or canceled, and she later drove back to Massachusetts, where she told Fastow she and Brian argued upon her late arrival. William told the jury that he traveled to Idaho with his children on December 27th, but that he and Ana had plans to celebrate New Year's together on January 4th. They discussed future trips, including New York City, and spoke openly about long-term goals. The testimony was devastating, not because it portrayed Ana as reckless, but because it revealed her state of mind. She was planning, she was emotionally engaged, and she was looking forward. She was not preparing to just disappear. Another witness followed, life insurance agent Mark Salvaggi. He testified that Ana had taken out 2 policies, a $1 million 20-year term policy and a $250,000 whole life policy. Brian was the sole beneficiary. Salvaggi also testified that Brian had attempted to obtain insurance himself but was denied due to his pending federal investigation. Critically, prosecutors acknowledged that there was no evidence Brian attempted to exploit the policies either before or after Ana's disappearance. When deliberations began, jurors had to answer one central question: what does the evidence say happened to Ana Walshe? Their answer was unanimous. Brian Walshe was found guilty of murder in the first degree, as well as lying to police and improper disposal of a human body. Each juror individually confirmed the verdict. At sentencing, Ana's sister Alexandra addressed the court. She spoke of an unbearable emptiness, of children children growing up without their mother, of a mother left in profound depression, of a family denied the dignity of a proper goodbye. She thanked investigators and the Commonwealth for never giving up.
Good morning, Your Honor. Good morning, everyone. My name is Alexandra Dmitrievich, and I'm the sister of Ana Walshe. I am here today to represent myself and my mother. I want to share with the court how losing my sister in January 2023 has forever changed our lives and left us with an unbearable emptiness. Losing my sister Anna so unexpectedly has altered our world in ways we never imagined. Anna was not just my sister. She was someone I grew up with, someone who knew me in ways no one else ever will. I struggled with the grief that comes without warning, hoping every morning that this is all just a terrible dream. The most painful part of this loss is knowing her children must now grow up without their mother's hand to hold. They now face a lifetime of milestones, big and small, where her absence will be deeply and painfully felt. This tragedy has also devastated my mother. She has developed severe depression and chronic exhaustion. Every single day, she carries the weight of losing her daughter. Our entire family is still learning how to live with this emptiness. Holidays and birthdays are now silent reminders of her absence. Because of the circumstances of my sister's death, we were denied the opportunity to say a final goodbye and to observe our customs, adding a layer of profound, unfinished grief to our loss. Anna was a mother, a daughter, a sister, and a friend. Her life was unfairly taken. We miss her beyond words. While we recognize that no sentence can bring her back, we ask the court to consider the permanent, long-lasting impact this loss has had on our family, especially her children. We stand in agreement with the Commonwealth and their recommendations. Finally, I would like to extend our deepest gratitude to the investigators, the Commonwealth's office, and everyone who has worked tirelessly on this case. Your dedication to seeking justice for my sister has provided our family with a sense of support during our darkest hours. Your Honor, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to share the full weight of this incomprehensible act. Anna will never be forgotten. We will carry her light and her memory with us forever. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. There is no task facing a judge that is more important or more difficult than crafting an appropriate sentence. The legislature mandates that the only appropriate sentence for the jury's verdict, murder in the first degree, is life in prison without the possibility of parole. That sentence is immensely appropriate and just, given your murderous acts and the life trauma that you've inflicted upon your own children. As to counts 2 and 3, I have wide discretion in sentencing. I want to state my rationale for your sentences on those 2 counts on the record now. I have considered various factors with regard to my sentence for counts 2 and counts 3, to which you pled guilty on November 18th, 2025. Specifically, I've considered the severity of the crimes, their nature and circumstances, and your role in those crimes, the need to deter others from committing comparable crimes, and your prior criminal record, namely your federal fraud case. As to the latter, your criminal history shows a long and well-documented history of deceitful and manipulative behavior. I've considered your character or lack thereof, your behavior, and your background. With regard to the nature and circumstances of the offenses, as to indictment 002, in the approximately 4 hours of interviews spanning 4 days, you concocted a detailed, completely fabricated story of what happened to Ana Walshe on January 1st, 2023, in order to cover up your murder of her and disposal of her body. Your lies triggered a multi-day, extensive missing persons investigation. A command center was set up in Cohasset and was manned by various law enforcement, to include the Cohasset Police Department and the Massachusetts State Police. And local and Massachusetts resources were deployed to Washington, D.C. to investigate at Ana's home. Because of your lies, thousands of hours of investigative resources were wasted and diverted from other deserving cases and investigations. As to the nature and circumstances of count 3, the improper disposal of Ana Walshe's body, the seriousness of your acts cannot be overstated. Your acts in dismembering your wife's body and disposing of her remains in multiple area dumpsters can only be described as barbaric and incomprehensible. You had no regard for the lifelong mental harm that your criminal acts inflicted on your then 2, 4, and 6-year-old sons, not only in taking their mother, but also, as is specific to this charge, in never being able to properly grieve that loss, to say goodbye to their mom. And I hear today the same is equally true of a sister who never was able to say a proper goodbye to her sister, a mother who never was able to say a proper goodbye to her daughter, and many friends who had the same loss. As to indictments 2 and 3, I have considered the sentencing guidelines, the aggravating factors. There are no mitigating factors in this case. And I also sought out and considered information from the Massachusetts Sentencing Commission, again, which I shared with the parties earlier this week. In particular, sentencings in 2022 and 2023 of defendants who were convicted of murder and or voluntary manslaughter, along with a Chapter 268, Section 13B conviction. This is not a guideline case. Finally, as to the first-degree murder conviction, I have considered the loss of the life of an innocent, remarkable woman, Ana Walshe, and its devastating impact on her children, as relayed to me in the letter from DCF, her family, as relayed to me in her sister's victim impact statement today, friends in their victim impact statements, and the community. In the trial testimony of Jem Mutlu and Alyssa Kirby, a little bit of Ana Walshe, her warm, powerful, and embracing spirit came to life in this historic courtroom. I have carefully listened to the moving victim impact statement, to the oral written sentencing arguments made by the Commonwealth and by Mr. Walsh. It's clear to me that Ana was a bright light in the lives of many people. She lifted people up. I am sure that nothing I say and no sentence I can impose, even a life sentence, will lessen the grief that Ana Walshe's family, her mother, sister, and 3 boys, extended like family, confidants, friends, and others have endured and will continue to endure. Although I consider the letter of Diana Walsh I simply cannot reconcile the person Diana Walsh describes in her letter with the person who stands before me for sentence. Mr. Walsh, you can stand. Mr. Walsh, you will live with the guilt and burden of Ana Walsh's death for the rest of your life. As to count 1, the jury having convicted you of murder in the first degree, I sentence you to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As to indictment 2, lying to the police in connection with the investigation of a life felony, I sentence you to no less than 19 years, no more than 20 years, the statutory maximum, in prison to be served consecutive to the life sentence in 001. The legislature caps the maximum sentence for the improper disposal of a body at 3 years in state prison. As to indictment 003, the improper disposal of the body of your wife, Ana Walsh, I sentence you to no less than 2 years, 364 days, and no more than 3 years in state prison to run consecutive to the sentences in 001 and 002.
This case is devastating in ways that go far beyond a courtroom. Ana Walsh wasn't just lost, she was erased. Her family is left not only with grief, but with the unbearable reality of how she was likely treated in her final moments. The idea that a human being, a sister, a mother, a friend, could be dismembered and discarded like trash is something that no family should ever have to reconcile. And then there are the children. They will grow up carrying a truth that no child should ever have to learn, that the person meant to protect them is the same person responsible for their mother's disappearance. In a single act, they lost both parents, one to violence and another to accountability. That's a trauma that doesn't end with a verdict. What makes this case especially difficult is the absence of closure. Ana's family has never been given the dignity of a goodbye. There is no burial, there's no final resting place, and that's why on a human level, I wish that Brian would just do what he has refused to do from the very beginning and just tell the truth, own up to what he did. It wouldn't undo the damage, but it could at least offer Ana's loved ones a fragment of peace. Silence in this context just feels like a continuation of harm. As for what I believe happened, it's important that I say this carefully. I don't think that this crime was impulsive in the way that people often imagine violence. I believe Brian was facing something far more destabilizing to him than legal trouble. At some point, it is very possible that he realized Ana was emotionally and romantically moving on. And for someone whose entire identity relied solely on control, image, and being needed, the idea of his intelligent, successful, and deeply capable wife building a life without him may have been terrifying. Ana no longer needed him to survive. She was creating independence, professionally, emotionally, and geographically, and I think that frightened him. Brian wasn't just losing his marriage, he was losing the illusion that he still had power. Combined with mounting legal pressure, financial exposure, and the slow collapse of the persona he'd spent years constructing, that loss may have felt existential. Desperation has a way of revealing who people truly are when there's nothing left to protect. Ultimately, this case is a reminder that danger doesn't always look like chaos. Sometimes it looks like control, like calm explanations, like someone who appears cooperative until the evidence tells a very different story. Ana Walsh deserved the life that she was working toward, and she deserved far better than the ending she was given. Cases like Ana Walsh's force us to confront an uncomfortable truth. This story is not an outlier. What happened to Ana feels unthinkable on a personal level, but on a societal level, it fits into a much larger, deeply troubling pattern. Intimate partner violence doesn't always announce itself with chaos or visible bruises. Often it hides behind familiarity, routine, and silence. And too often, by the time the danger becomes visible, it's already too late. The numbers are staggering. In the United States alone, more than 12 million people are affected by intimate partner violence every single year. Women between the ages of 18 to 24 and 25 to 34 experience the highest rates, years often associated with building careers, families, and independence. Globally, the picture is even more devastating. In 2024, an estimated 50,000 women and girls worldwide were killed by intimate partners or other family members. That accounts for roughly 60% of all intentional female homicides. Closer to home, the reality is just as grim. In the US, 55% of all female homicide victims are killed by a current or former intimate partner. More than half. These are not statistics about strangers. They are spouses, they are partners, they are people that are once trusted. And while numbers can feel abstract, every single one of them represents a real person, someone who had plans, relationships, and a future that was violently taken from them. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic abuse, help is available and you do not have to navigate it alone. You can contact the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-SAFE or text START to 88788. These services are confidential, free, and available 24/7. Before we end this episode, I want to take a moment to center Ana. Not the headlines, not the evidence, not the violence, but the person. Ana was a mother, a daughter, a sister, and a woman who worked relentlessly to build a life of purpose and independence. Her story matters, not because of how it ended, but because of who she was before it did. If you stayed through this episode, thank you for bearing witness. Telling these stories responsibly means sitting with discomfort, asking hard questions, and refusing to look away when the truth is complicated or painful. If you or someone you love is in an unsafe situation, please take that seriously. There is help. There are people who will listen, and you are not weak for needing support. You are not alone. To Ana's family, and especially her children, I hope that justice, however incomplete, offers some measure of validation. And I hope that continuing to speak Ana's name helps ensure she is never reduced to evidence or forgotten as a statistic. If you have a case that you believe deserves attention, especially one involving delayed justice, unanswered questions, or a victim whose voice has been overlooked, you can submit it through the links in the description below. I read every single submission. If you found this episode meaningful, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and turning on notifications so you are alerted the moment a new case goes live. It genuinely helps this channel grow and allows these stories to reach more people. There are so many details to this case that I simply could not fit into this video, or else we would be here for another 3 or 4 hours, but I have linked all of my sources and links to Ana Walshe's trial in the description box below if you would like to learn more about the case. I would also love to hear your thoughts, opinions, and feedback in the comments below. Just please remember to be kind and respectful when expressing your opinion. If you are listening on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts, I'd really appreciate you taking a moment to leave a 5-star rating. It's one of the simplest ways to support the show and helps me continue bringing attention to cases that deserve to be heard. And if you enjoy this content but prefer it in shorter, more digestible pieces, I post regularly on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook, where I share condensed versions of cases and ongoing updates. I will see you next Thursday. Until then, stay safe, stay aware, and never stop seeking the truth.